Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Public Finance Management Act replaces the Finance Administration Act of 2005, and we all will agree that 2005 legislation needs to be revised and needs to be changed in the 2020 environment. So we believe that there is need for a public review of the Public Finance Management Bill. Mr. Speaker, the bill seeks to commit the government, the Minister of Finance, to a sustainable fiscal situation, a balanced budget, and a predetermined level of public debt over the financial year and 2 subsequent years. What that means, Mr. Speaker, to my mind, is it puts the Minister of Finance under certain restrictions and curbs his, not power, but it curbs to a certain extent his ability to handle the country's fiscal management. Mr. Speaker, I have a few comments on the bill, and I hope we can look at them not with jaundiced eyes, but with a view to improving the whole texture of the bill, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Section 26, it says fiscal policy to be submitted to Cabinet for approval. I'm wondering why it's not Parliament, why only Cabinet? I would think that the fiscal policy, after it's approved by Parliament, by Cabinet, should go to the Parliament for approval. If we're speaking about transparency and accountability, I think that should be no secret. The Parliament should be able to even debate, or if not debate, at least the fiscal policy document should be circulated in Parliament. Under Section 28, Mr. Speaker, it says the fiscal budget survey to be issued prior to the circulation of the budget circular. Under Section 28, it doesn't say to be circulated to who. Section 46, Mr. Speaker. I want to ask a question on Section 46. It says that subject Section 46, 2 and 3, subject to the directions of the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry, which was a debt incurred by the government in connection with the purchase of goods and services before the end of the financial year that remains unpaid at the end of the financial year must be recorded as a charge against the appropriation to which it relates. And it says under Section 46.3, it says within 30 days after the end of the financial year, on such longer periods as may authorize by the Minister, the arrears of the payment recorded as a charge under subsection 2 must be discharged or settled. I want to find out, Mr. Speaker, just as a matter of inquiry, what happens to the DFCs, the design finance bills, the design finance projects that we are pursuing, we seem to be pursuing. Where does that fall in this whole scenario? How are they handled? The design finance contracts, how are they handled, Mr. Speaker? Under Section 47, it says approval of a commitment under subsection 3 subject to the availability of sufficient unencumbered and uncommitted appropriation against which the commitment is made and the commitment must be consistent with the multi-year commitments approved by the responsible minister under subsection 1. Again, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to know where will this whole phenomenon of design finance contracts 47 section 47. Under section 59, Mr. Speaker, it speaks about malfeasance by public servants. That may be a very touching question, but what about malfeasance by political appointees? We should. There are no areas where you can punish malfeasance by politicians in that bill. It just speaks of malfeasance by public servants, Mr. Speaker. Section 61, disposal of assets. It speaks to disposal of assets, Mr. Speaker, and that to me, in my mind, is a very important section, because we heard last week that the government had disposed of an asset, namely the Dia Mall, for $5 million. $5 million. That's what was said. I don't if, and we. Section 61, the disposal of assets. It says, where transaction involves the disposal of a public asset, the means of honest and accountability, transparency, fairness, and equity must apply, Mr. Speaker. And I think that is an extremely important piece of legislation, because the disposal of assets, government assets, consists of crown lands, consists of as I said, the Dia Mall and the crown lands. When we sell our crown lands, Mr. Speaker, we would like to know that they are sold with transparency, accountability, and fairness, Mr. Speaker. So I think the disposal of assets is something that we have to look very carefully at, Mr. Speaker. Under Section 62, there is a ceiling on the public debt. Again, I ask the question, which I've asked several times before, does that cause an end to the design finance contracts? Section 71 on grants, Mr. Speaker, it says that grants must be placed in the consolidated fund. Section 71(3), it says grants must be placed in the consolidated fund, and also says that these grants, there must be a full accounting for these grants, Mr. Speaker. I'm aware, Mr. Speaker, that there is a program which I'm not passing judgment on, but there's a program called Synergy, which is being funded by a grant, I understand. I hope that would bring this program into the ambit of Section 73, placed in the consolidated fund and disbursed in the proper manner as this Act says, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Section 75 speaks to the public accounts, and I'm happy that's there, because it will lay to rest some things that are being said in this Parliament for political gain, that the leader of the opposition can ask anything because he's leader of the Public Accounts Committee. And it says clearly that the Public Accounts Committee still remains a creature of the standing orders. So I hope that we've cleared that once and for all, that the leader of the opposition can't ask for anything, can't ask for everything he wants, because he's leader of the opposition and he's chairman of the Public Accounts Committee. That has been perpetuated several times, Mr. Speaker, which is which is really not true, and which this this shows that, Mr. Speaker. Section 87, there's an inquiry committee, and inquiry committee again, it is for civil servants. Well, for civil servants, again, there is absolutely no sanctions, that's what I'm looking for ministers or people, or ministers or political appointees who do not follow the dictates of the acts. Also, Mr. Speaker, there is the powers of the Accountant General, and it says in Section 11G that the Accountant General can refuse payment if the Accountant General feels that the payment is not necessary or prudent. I hope that the powers that be understand that the Accountant General has a right to be prudent and has a right to determine what has to be paid and what has not to be paid. And there's never a case where the Accountant General is pressured to make any payments, but the Accountant General is allowed to follow the dictates of the bill. So, Mr. Speaker, as this is a new type, a new era in the financial management of our country, and I hope that we understand what that means, and the government maintains not only the law, but the spirit of the law. And we understand that the people's finances do not belong to us. We are just custodians for a while, and then the law, in spite of some issues that I'm sure my colleagues will raise, some issues, the law, it is hoped that it will give effect to more accountability on the finances of the country, that we become more accountable, and we do not behave as if the country's money belongs to us, and we can do whatever we want with it, and report after, just because we've won an election. I hope we learn that lesson, Mr. Speaker, but I'd like the law to have some sanctions for bad behavior by ministers and people who hold political office. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.